Is Russia at the peak of its power as a nation since the fall of the USSR? It is. It is. When the USSR fell, Russia, well, what came out of the USSR, of the debris of the USSR, was first of all these independent nations, the Commonwealth of Independent States, it used to be called, which was all the Central Asian republics, the CI, the Stans, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, so on and so forth, all those nations. And you had the Baltic republics, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and so on. So all these came out of the USSR. They became independent. And then you had rump Russia that was left. And Boris Yeltsin, the drunkard, became the president, and he proceeded to ruin the economy of the nation. So he handed over the life savings of generations of Russians to a bunch of thugs, crooks, oligarchs. See, the USSR was a collectivized society. So all the savings of the people were held collectively as the wealth of the nation. It was all in the custody of the government of Russia, of the USSR. After independence, all that wealth that was saved up was handed over to oligarchs, to what we call oligarchs. And they proceeded to deliberately ruin the economy and squander away the wealth. That is what Yeltsin did to Russia. He destroyed the Russian economy. It was a disaster. And much worse, during his time, the Chechens they declared independence. There was the first Chechen war, which Russia lost under Yeltsin's presidency. And then Putin comes to power, and everybody thinks Putin is going to be another puppet. But Putin goes ahead and wins the second Chechen war by flattening Grozny. And it was brutal, but he won. He made it very clear that he will not tolerate separatism, something we can learn from the Russians to some extent. We don't necessarily have to follow the exact same path, but we can learn a thing or two from them, from the Russians. And then slowly over time, he rebuilt the economy, Vladimir Putin. He restructured the military. He made the military a fighting force again. And today, Russia is despite all the sanctions, the truckloads of sanctions the Americans have imposed on Russia, despite that, the Russian economy is actually growing. It's the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing major economies in the world. Definitely outperforming all the European nations. Russia, you won't really say it's a European nation, it's an Eastern nation, but whatever. So Russia is doing incredibly well. Russia has actually come out of this war looking so much better. All, I would say, as an outcome of the policies Putin has been working on and implementing for the past, I don't know, what, 25 plus years. 25 plus years. So I would agree with you, Sumit Jain, that Russia is indeed at the peak of its power as a nation since the fall of the USSR. And the crucial thing going forward is that succession. So Mr. Putin is in his early 70s, I don't know, 72, 73 or whatever years old he is, right? The question is, how long does he stay in power? He is now definitely becoming an elderly person, right? Maybe 10 years. Then he will eventually have to hand over the reins of power to someone else. Now, Russia, let's be very clear, is not a democracy. There is no such thing as a democracy in the world. They're all fake democracies. So, most likely, he will have to handpick a successor. That is the succession in the regime, in the nation. If you mess up the succession, the nation crumbles, and everything you worked for will be lost. So, in any nation, if you look at history, the past 2000 years of history, the most critical phase of time in the history of an empire, of a kingdom, of a nation is when there is succession, a transfer of power from one ruler to another, either through voluntary abdication, through death, or whatever, conquest. If the succession goes wrong, everything the previous leader worked for can be squandered in a matter of months or years. So Russia is indeed at the peak of its power. The most important thing for Russia is for Mr. Putin to pick the right successor, somebody who will take it even further than him. Does he have somebody in mind right now? Only he will know. He will not announce it to anyone, as he should, and that's the right policy. Don't tell anyone. Keep it secret. So if he gets that right, then in 100 years he will be called Putin the Great. Otherwise, it'll be a mess.